Hi guys, welcome back to AFTV and welcome back to Straight Outta Colney. Mikel Arteta's been speaking ahead of a massive game against Norwich. Sorry, I can't believe I'm saying that. Massive game against Norwich. With all due respect to Norwich, who've also lost every single game this season, although they've managed to score a goal where we haven't. It's crazy that we're 4 games in and this is already a massive game, and it's not against a team that we are even saying is a rival for where we want to finish in the table. But that's the reality of the situation. It's been a really poor start. There have been reasons for it. There are circumstances and things to consider. But here we are, Norwich, massive game on the weekend. And Arteta was asked about a lot of things. Having a fully fit squad back. Excuses, are there any more now? Surely not. He was asked about Jack Wilshere, unbelievably. He was asked about all sorts of things, injuries, team news, what he thinks of Norwich, and we're going to go into it now, reading out some of the best quotes, and just sort of dissect them a little bit, just a brief sort of overview of the press conference. So, yeah, let's go straight into it, because he was asked on what the effect of having a fully fit squad will have on the club. I think off the bat, you're already thinking, well, listen, we went into some of those games. That Chelsea game in particular, we went in without, White, Gabriel, Partey, a few other key players, Lacazette, Odegaard, who just signed. Who else? Aubameyang, obviously, was on the bench. And obviously, those things play a part. And he was asked about that, and he obviously mentioned the circumstances. But here's what he had to say. He said, I'm really looking forward to having everyone available and try and start the season the way we want. We don't want to use any excuses. We know how difficult the start was with injuries, a lot of COVID issues we had, and the extremely difficult games we had. We have to reset now, and we need to start, get everyone back on track and start to win football games, which is what we have to do. Now, I think what's interesting about that, and he kind of talks about this a few times in the press conference, so I'm not going to read every quote, but with that one in particular, the reason I wanted to read is he talks about not using any excuses. Now, what I will say is there are excuses. I don't like the word excuse, but there are reasons why Arsenal weren't at their best or couldn't be at their best against Man City, Chelsea and Brentford, because some of our best players were missing. And no matter how well we played in those games, if you've got those players missing, the team can always do better, because Thomas Partey elevates Arsenal. A fully fit Lacazette and Aubameyang, Gabriel and White as well, they elevate Arsenal. So there are reasons why Arsenal weren't at the best, but it's more about the manner of the performance. And I think that sometimes, I understand why he might not mention it in the press conference, but that's what I want to be asking him. Yes, we know you had players missing. We know you had tough games, but it's the manner of the performance. And also, it's going into a game against City. Yes, you're missing key players, but you still had players who are your own signings that you decided not to play in that game. And I think that's the interesting thing. It's not so much about, I think even the staunchest of critics when it comes to Mikel Arteta will say, of course, missing those players plays a part. But there are other things he could have done to make it easier, or easier for himself anyway. Listen, it was a tough start, and he acknowledges that, but it's Norwich on the weekend, and no more excuses. He's asked about that. We'll go into it in a sec. But first, he was asked about what he makes of Norwich. And, he says things like what they've been doing over the years. They've been very consistent with the manager, Daniel Farke. They've been up and down, but they haven't changed much. And he's right. There's a consistency to Norwich in terms of the way they want to play, the types of managers they bring in, and their kind of philosophy as a club, which is obviously very respectable. He says it's a team that's a joy to watch. They want to play. They take risks. They're very attacking. He says, I don't know what they'll do against us, but so far from what I've seen, even against the top sides, it's been good enough. It's been good, even though the results haven't been good. And what he's basically saying is they've played some good football and just played some sides that are better than them. And I think, for everything Arteta's saying here, learn from that, Mikel. Learn from the fact that, we're sitting here saying, Norwich, despite everything, they lost 3 games and scored a goal, but they had a go. And I think with Arsenal at times, it feels like we're not truly having a go. Like, there's always, the handbrake's always slightly on. We're never really getting out of second and third gear in terms of committing players forward. Now, whether that's because we're overcalculated, overcoached, whether that's because the players have been missing, I don't know. But yeah, he was complimentary of Norwich, and rightly so. I think there's a lot to admire about that club. He was then asked whether Norwich is a must-win game, and he basically said it always is at Arsenal. The pressure's always there to win. And I think a game like Norwich at home, whether you're going for the title or you're in a position where we are, which is bottom of the table, and we're looking for our first win, a game like Norwich is always a must-win. And I mean that with all due respect to Norwich. As I said, a club I really respect and a manager I like, and they've got some very good players. And I said in the warm-up, they're going to cause us problems. They cause Leicester problems. They cause Liverpool some problems. They will cause us problems on the weekend. But ultimately, it's a must-win because you should always be beating Norwich at the Emirates. That's just the reality of where we are in terms of player personnel, investment in these teams. We should be winning this, and I'm not going to say it should be comfortable. Well, I mean, it should be comfortable, but ultimately there should be a degree of routineness about it. We should be turning up, playing our football, and not worrying too much about what Norwich are going to do. So yeah, he was very complimentary about Norwich, and rightly so, saying, they're probably going to take the game to us, and yeah, I imagine they will. Let's move on in terms of just discussing the international break briefly. Well, not so much the international break, more discussing how the international break might have impacted Arsenal. Now, he was asked whether the international break would have given Arsenal time to get players back, players who've been been unfit. Ben White's had COVID. All these kind of other circumstances. We mentioned the players before. He says, yes, I think we needed a break to get them back for different reasons. They've been missing for long periods. Hopefully by Saturday, we will have a different team. And I think what's interesting is this is something Edu said in his interview as well. Different team. I don't think he wants to say better team. I don't think he wants to say first team. But he's saying different team. He's not... Listen, we all knew it. And maybe I kind of respect the honesty. But he's basically saying what you've been seeing the last few weeks, especially at City, wasn't our first 11. And, and those players aren't going to be regularly involved. And what we're hopefully going to see on Saturday is more of a first team, is more what I want to be putting out on a regular basis, more consistently and all that. I'd still argue that he had his own signings on the bench that he could have used against City. But ultimately, I understand. Partey wasn't available, Gabriel and White weren't, and he's now saying a different team, hopefully with his core now, with his core of players. Let's see if Ramsdale plays. That's the other thing I'd say. He spent 24 million on Ramsdale, get him in the 11. He was then asked about changes to the squad, and this is what he had to say. We have a completely different squad with the number of changes that you just mentioned. You can tell that is unheard of. Now we have the tools that we believe are going to give us the best opportunity to compete in the way we want to compete and build what we want to build in this project. And now we have to make it work. We have to glide it together. We need to create relationships, chemistry, understanding. We have to adapt, and we have to do that really, really quickly. That's it, Mikel. It's got to happen quickly for you now, because a lot of fans are feeling like it's on, this kind of project is on borrowed time. And he's right. The relationships, the chemistry, the understanding, this all needs to come together very quickly. He says that there's been a lot of changes to the squad. I think there's some truth to that. I don't think there have been as many changes as Arsenal fans would have hoped. And that's not Arsenal fans being unreasonable. I think there was a reasonable expectation of what Arsenal could do in terms of chopping and changing. And I think Arsenal have fallen slightly short of that in the last few windows. But he's right, there have been a lot of changes. And the team that will go out this weekend, you would think has got Arteta's seal of approval on a lot of them. So yeah, a lot of changes, as he said, we have to adapt, and we have to do that really quickly. I think he's right. It's got to start quick, especially because this run of form, well, we hope it's a run of form. This run of games coming up is favourable. It's not easy, especially with the position Arsenal are in, but it is favourable, and you would hope that they can put a bit of a run together. We'll see. As he said, it's got to happen quickly. He's asked about Arsenal's current position in the table. Here's what he said. It's nowhere near where we want to be, that's for sure. I think it needs a little bit of perspective of what happened. Everybody is disappointed, or we are no different. The fans are disappointed, and everybody related to the club should be disappointed. But we are so determined and willing to change as quickly as possible, and we are on it. Now, I think what I liked about that, he says we're on it, I hope so. Norwich, that first game will tell us whether you're on it. If you go out, play some brilliant football, win 3-4-0, put on a bit of a show, new players, you've got Tomiyasu, a new signing in, maybe it all starts to come together. You start to convince people, okay, Norwich is one game, but let's see if we can put this together over a run. So we'll see. That statement, we are on it. We're going to find out very soon. He talks about a little bit of perspective for what's happened at the start of the season. We've talked about that. And then he says that the fans are disappointed, as he is as well, as they all are, him, Edu. And listen, I understand that, but if you're as disappointed as us, I think you've got to read how the fans are feeling. I've got no doubt they're disappointed. I don't think they're out there, sipping wine, having a lovely week because, there's no Arsenal playing and whatever. I think they'll be as concerned as we are, as the Arsenal fans are. But you're in a position, we feel a bit helpless at times. You're in a position to actually make a difference. And I think we need to see something this weekend that suggests to us that you really want to turn this around and make a difference instantly. A statement, like Ramsdale starting over Leno. I think Leno's made a good start to the season. But bring him in. He's your signing. Bring him in. Tomiyasu as well. And I think these are the kind of things that I think will start to turn our disappointment into, dare I say, borderline excitement for at least something that will feel fresh and new, and yeah, who knows, we'll see. He was asked about whether the young players that we brought in can help right now, and essentially he said, yeah, absolutely. He talks about the amount of changes that they made over 2 years to the squad, almost 30 players, he said. He talked about Edu's interview, but ultimately saying that these players need to have an impact immediately, and I agree. We've not signed a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds. Lokonga's 21. He's young. I don't think it's fair to depend on him in midfield week in, week out, but he should be ready to do something to contribute. That's what I'm looking for. I was having my mind blank there. He should be ready to contribute to the team immediately. He's in the Belgium national team, got some minutes during the international break, and he should be ready to contribute along with Thomas Partey. Alongside Thomas Partey. But we talk about Aaron Ramsdale, 23, Ben White, 23, Tavares, 20, I think, 21. They should be ready to play when they're called upon, and that's why I was disappointed Tavares didn't play at the Etihad. So, he says that the players he's brought in can help right now. I've not really seen evidence of that yet, because you've got Ramsdale and you didn't start him in the league at City, and you didn't start Tavares at left wing back instead of Kieran Tierney, who could have played left centre back, and Kolasinac you were trying to sell. Could have been on the bench. So, I think these players can commit now and contribute and play a part, but you got to show that to us, Mikel. But listen, I'm glad that at least he's saying that they can have an impact now. Let's talk about other players who might be having an impact now, and that is Ainsley Maitland-Niles. He basically, let's go back a sec before I read out what he said. Ainsley Maitland-Niles was in a tricky situation because, he played out of his skin when we won the FA Cup. Clubs wanted him, clubs looked at him. We're then in a situation where we're turning down bids. We start the season, we change our formation, so Maitland-Niles isn't playing. He goes on loan to West Brom. He does okay, I think. And then ultimately Arsenal are refusing to let him go to Everton this summer. This window just passed. And we're talking about private conversations and him, essentially wanting to leave the club, or at least wanting to be wanted, or at least wanting to be given an opportunity. And he basically said that private conversations occurred. He says, as always, we discussed openly but privately, and that's how we resolve matters. And then he was asked about Ainsley Maitland-Niles' response in recent days, and he said that after the conversation we had privately to explain and put things on the table about our feelings, he basically said that a few months ago we let him go to West Brom, and he embraced that opportunity, and he's a versatile player that we wanted to keep. So, look, I think Maitland-Niles is going to be more of a squad player, but there's going to be injuries and players missing, and it'd be interesting to see whether he gets a game time. El Neni, Xhaka, they're not available for the game on the weekend. So is Ainsley Maitland-Niles going to come in and play alongside Partey, or is it going to be Lokonga? So it'll be interesting to see what he does. Maybe he plays a back three and that's our new wing back. So who knows? But anyway, to sum that all up, conversations were had. He's obviously not going to tell us exactly what was said, but he's happy to keep him. So let's see what we get from Maitland-Niles for the rest of this season. He was, of course, asked about Takehiro Tomiyasu. If you want to know more about him, we've done a breakdown on our channel on AFTV, so go have a little look. But he basically said that he's a player who, as I read it here, he's got the capacity to play in a back four, anywhere across the back four. He can even play in a three. He's got versatility, and some of the things I saw in my research is that he's a player who, good distributor, very athletic. I think he could be a player that suits what Arteta's wanted from his right back. He's tried to get it out of Callum Chambers. It's not really worked. Maybe Tomiyasu will be the guy who can come in and fulfill that role, and actually we'll start to see what it is that Arteta's been wanting from his right backs. Let's see. He's very good in the air. I think he could help out Ben White there as well. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see whether he starts. Asked about whether he's going to make his debut against Norwich. He basically said they're sorting out a work permit, but that shouldn't really be a problem. He said he's back in the country right now. He's going to meet him for the first time today, at the time of recording the press conference. And he said he's been playing, so he should be completely fit. And we've been impressed. That's the reason we decided to sign him, because they've been impressed by his performances for Japan and Bologna and Serie A as well. And a lot of people who watch Serie A regularly tell you that this guy could be the real deal. So, let's see what happens there. Let's end on some other stuff. Asked about Aaron Ramsdale, said he's doing well and that he's there to sort of compete and push Leno. He was asked about who's going to start in goal, and he said any player can start. We want the competition and to raise the level in each position, which I think understandably, Leno knowing that Aaron Ramsdale's there to challenge for his position, I'm sure that's going to raise the performances of both. He said that's why we recruited Aaron. We know what a fantastic goalkeeper Bernd is as well. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that happens across the season. Who is going to be Arteta's number one? He was asked on where the real Arsenal is. I thought this was interesting, and how he can ensure that the club can go on a consistent run of form. Here's his quote. He said, having some consistency means having some stability. Obviously, we need to get the stability right when we are able to put a team out there in consecutive matches, building relationships, building understanding, and getting momentum and wins. Hopefully, we can do that pretty soon. Listen, I completely agree with him. You need the players to be fit and available. You need them. You need your first 11 and the players you want playing regularly to be there together and to be available. And that's absolutely right. I would also just say, though, why when Tierney gets cramp are you bringing on Tavares? But you're not starting him against City when you go to a back three, and he's arguably the best person to fill in that left wing back role. Why are you playing Pablo Mari in the first two games? Yes, he was poor, but I thought Mari was quite good last season. And then you finally go to a back three which suits him, and you're taking him out. So all this talk about consistency has got to come from the manager as well. Lokonga starts the first two games, doesn't play at City. So I agree with what Arteta's saying word for word, but we need evidence of it as well, is all I'll say. Consistency doesn't just come from having players available. It comes from tactics. It comes from the manager looking beyond a few bad performances and having faith in his players to kind of get through the bad patch. And, look at Pablo Mari. I think there's a good player there. Had a poor start to the season, but he wasn't willing to kind of stick at it. Mohamed El Neni, who he's been playing in some of these big games away from home, with a back three and a midfield two, and he decides not to play on Neni. He decides to play Xhaka and Odegaard, and that's strange to me. So as I said, he's right back consistency, but it's got to come from himself as well. He was then asked if Arsenal need to rise up the table. Well, obviously they do. And if there are no excuses right now. That big word, excuses, we mentioned it earlier. He said 100%. We don't want to give any excuses. We've tried to explain what's happened in previous weeks. You can give it all the reasons you want, but if somebody doesn't want to see it, it's up to them. We try to explain things. I think we have been very clear, probably more clear than ever, to try to explain what the club is trying to do and what we're trying to do. I think he's alluding to Edu's interview there. Saying we've tried to be clear, more clear than perhaps ever before. I think that's interesting. It sounds like he's a bit disappointing, perhaps. It sounds like he's a bit disappointed with how it's being received. His, the transparency that's coming from Edu and stuff. But listen, as I said, Arsenal fans just want to see results and good performances right now. So I get what he's saying, but do it on the pitch and you'll start to win us over. Is all I say about that. Just to round off quickly, asked about whether Partey and Lokonga could be the ideal midfield partnership. He touched on that. Obviously, other issues in midfield with Smith Rowe. Is he going to be fit or not? I think this will be interesting how he wants to approach this. He played Odegaard as a central midfielder against City. Is that something he sees long term? We will see. But I think Partey and Lokonga surely will be the partnership on the weekend. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Maitland-Niles will come in. We'll see. And just to round it off, and one last thing, asked if Jacques? It's not French. Asked if Jack Wilshere could be, given the chance to train with Arsenal. He said, he's someone that I know, that I shared a dressing room with. He's so loved around the club with every person here. Our doors are always open. Listen, with the state of our central midfield right now, suspensions, injuries, players that I think we're struggling to rely on, I would give Xhaka. Why do I keep saying Xhaka? I would give Jack Wilshere training session, bring him to London Colney, let him see if he can prove himself, and hey, can he do any worse than what we've got in these opening 3 games? I don't think so. And anyway, we all love Jack Wilshere. Maybe the nostalgia in me just wants him back to see how we could do. Let's see. Anyway, guys, that has been the kind of main points. We flew through that. I know that's a lot of information. I've talked very quickly. I've just been kind of, putting it all out there, everything that came up in the press conference. With a game this big, there's always a lot of questions and a lot he's going to say. But ultimately, the headlines are, we need to respond, and I think he feels confident, or at least hopeful, and he wants the fans to rally round the team now, with the fact that there's a fully fit squad, players back, new signings to come in and really get a fair run at it. I don't know. Could this be a new start for Arsenal? Who knows? Arteta seems to think it could be. Let's see. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out all the other content that's coming out ahead of the game on the weekend. The warm-up, we've got box to box, all that, and don't forget our matchday content as well. Thank you for joining. We'll see you on the next one.